India says its forces have clashed with Chinese troops in a disputed area along the Himalayas for the first time in nearly 2 years. India's Ministry of Defence saying soldiers from both sides suffered some minor injuries in the skirmish, while accusing China of encroaching upon Indian territory. A Chinese military official, on the other hand, accuses Indian troops of illegally crossing the line while Beijing's forces were on regular patrol on the 9th of December. The troops have been separated from contact, but the Chinese army is calling on New Delhi to strictly control and restrain its frontline forces. The incident took place in the Tawang sector of India's Arunachal Pradesh state, which borders China's south. The area is also claimed by Beijing. India and China went to war over their border regions in 1962, eventually establishing the line of actual control. But the two countries do not agree on its precise location and regularly accuse each other of overstepping. Beijing says diplomatic lines remain open and it is hoping both sides will work to keep the situation along the border stable.
双方一直通过外交和军事渠道就涉边问题保持畅通的沟通。 希望印方同中方相向而行，认真落实两国领导人达成的重要共识，严格遵守双方签署的有关协议协定精神，共同维护中印边境地区的和平安宁。
Neha Punya joins us live now from New Delhi for more. Neha, is there a risk at all of further escalation at that border?
That's certainly a worry and has been a concern now since May 2020, when this border standoff with China really came into sharper focus following that face-off in Galwan that saw more than 20 Indian soldiers die and casualties on the Chinese side as well. This particular flare-up that's happened in Tawang is an area that military experts say is identified as disputed by both sides, and things become trickier in the winter months, where because of the snow, both sides tend to retreat from their usual positions, and it's quite normal, experts say, for both sides to march right up to their claim lines. But we are seeing the kind of tone that came out of Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's address to Parliament, very stridently saying that India pushed back against this Chinese attempt and stopped Chinese soldiers from crossing into Indian territory, and also saying that while local commanders on the ground have managed to establish peace for now, there is stability at the border. But at the same time saying that India will not be open to such attempts in the future, and that its army will push back against such attempts. And there is rising anger that the border standoff with China has not been entirely resolved. We've seen protests break out in Jammu and Kashmir, with some groups burning Chinese flags and also Chinese products. We saw similar scenes in 2020 as well, where there was significant anger following that Galwan incident. And it also led to the Indian government boycotting various Chinese apps and products as well. This time around, of course, we haven't seen any sort of statements to that effect. But there is public anger, which also prompted, many say, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's very strident speech in Parliament.
Neha, this scuffle, it did lead to some injuries. It happened just after India participated in military exercises with the United States. How are New Delhi's ties with Washington perhaps playing into its relations with Beijing?
It's certainly a factor, and we did see China complain about those military drills that took place in Uttarakhand. This is on the western front of the border that both countries share, and very close to the Galwan area where we saw skirmishes in 2020. And China had said that the joint military exercises violated the spirit of relevant agreements signed by both countries, and that it did not help build bilateral trust. Now, India's retaliation to that was that it's China that needs to walk the talk and also make good on its promises of committing and executing these bilateral agreements. And we heard India's Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, speaking just last week, describing ties between China and India as abnormal, saying as long as troop build-up continues from the Chinese side at the border, ties will not resume any sort of normalcy. But this whole US angle is something to consider, because India has become a lot more vocal in its engagement with the United States. It's also come at a time when India's G20 presidency has kicked off, and all eyes are on various events that India will be hosting, including a leaders' summit in September next year.
Neha, thank you for that. Neha Punya, they're live from New Delhi.